£330 million. That's how much London's councils overspent on homelessness last year. And if you're wondering why your rent keeps climbing while the mayor talks about protecting tenants, this number should give you a clue about just how badly things are falling apart in the capital's housing market. I've spent the past few weeks digging through council reports, government statistics, and property data. What I've found isn't some conspiracy theory about shadowy property investors. It's actually worse, because the people responsible for this crisis aren't hiding in the shadows. They're standing at podiums, making speeches about affordable housing, while the rental market they're supposed to be managing collapses around them. Let me start with what's actually happening on the ground. London has lost 45,000 rental properties since 2021. Not demolished, not converted to social housing, simply sold off by landlords who've decided they can't or won't continue renting in this city. According to research from Savills and Trust for London, these homes were sold without replacement. That means 4.3% of London's entire private rented sector just vanished in 3 years. And here's the part that should concern you most. The properties disappearing fastest are at the affordable end of the market. During 2023, rental stock in the most affordable areas fell by 3.3% per month, compared to 2.6% across the rest of London. The homes that low-income Londoners depend on are disappearing faster than anywhere else. But Sadiq Khan's office would have you believe this is all beyond their control. Market forces, economic cycles. The usual excuses. Except the data tells a different story. Right now, the average rent in London is £2,265 per month, according to the Office for National Statistics. That's the highest rent anywhere in England by a considerable margin. The average in the Northeast is just £756. In London, you're paying 3 times that for the same basic right to a roof over your head. But wait, I hear the mayor's defenders saying, rent inflation in London has actually slowed down. And technically, that's true. Annual rental growth in the capital fell to 4.3% in the 12 months to October 2025, down from over 11% the year before. So crisis averted, right? Not exactly, because here's what those reassuring statistics don't tell you. When something costs £2,265 per month, even a 4% increase means nearly another £100 on your monthly bills. The rate of increase might be slowing, but rents are still hitting record highs. Rightmove data from October showed London rents reaching £2,736 per month for new lets. That's up 44% since 2020, while average wages rose by just 36% over the same period. Renting in London now swallows 44% of the average wage. 5 years ago, it was 40%. The situation isn't stabilizing, it's still getting worse. It's just getting worse slightly more slowly than it was before. So why are landlords leaving? If you listen to tenant advocacy groups, you might think landlords are simply greedy investors who can't handle a few extra regulations. But the reality is more complicated. Start with the numbers. Buy-to-let landlords have faced relentless cost increases over the past decade. Section 24 tax changes removed their ability to offset mortgage interest against rental income. Stamp duty surcharges made buying additional properties more expensive. Higher interest rates since 2022 pushed mortgage costs up dramatically. According to CBRE's analysis, approximately 400,000 rental properties have been sold out of the UK rental market since 2016. That's not a gentle adjustment. That's a structural collapse of the small landlord sector. And then came the Renters' Rights Bill. Now, I want to be clear about something. Many of the changes in this bill are perfectly reasonable. Ending Section 21, no-fault evictions will give tenants more security. Creating a database of landlords will help identify rogue operators. These are good things, but the timing and implementation have been catastrophic for housing supply. The bill abolishes fixed-term tenancies entirely. Every rental agreement becomes periodic, meaning tenants can leave with 2 months' notice at any time. For landlords planning their finances around assured income, this represents a fundamental shift in risk. If a landlord wants to sell their property, they now face a 12-month protected period at the start of any tenancy where they cannot use that ground for possession. Then they must give 4 months' notice. Then if the tenant refuses to leave, there's a court process that can take months more in an already overwhelmed system. Add it all up, and a landlord who needs to sell might be looking at nearly 2 years from decision to completion. For someone approaching retirement who plan to sell their rental property to fund their pension, that timeline is unworkable. A survey from early 2025 found that 42% of landlords in London plan to exit the market within the year. Even if that number is inflated by people venting frustration, even half that figure represents a massive loss of rental housing. And the evidence on the ground supports this. Rightmove data shows that 18% of homes currently for sale were previously on the rental market, compared with just 8% in 2010. In London, that figure rises to 29%. Nearly a third of properties coming to market in the capital are former rentals being sold off. This is where the mayor's response has been so inadequate. Sadiq Khan has been in office since 2016. That's nearly a decade to address London's housing crisis. And his signature policy announcement this year was a proposal to build 6,000 rent-controlled homes for key workers by 2030. 6,000 homes by 2030. For a city that needs 88,000 new homes every single year. In August, data emerged showing that construction had started on just 347 affordable homes between April and June. At that rate, the mayor won't come close to meeting even his reduced targets. Lord Bailey, the Conservative housing spokesman, called it out directly. The mayor is clearly failing, and we all pay the price. Meanwhile, the homelessness crisis has reached levels not seen in decades. According to government statistics, 131,140 households were in temporary accommodation across England by March 2025. That's the highest number ever recorded, up nearly 12% in just 1 year. And London accounts for a disproportionate share of this crisis. 19 of the 25 councils with the highest rates of households in temporary accommodation are in the capital. In Newham, 5.8% of all households are living in temporary accommodation. That's more than 10 times the national average. Perhaps most devastating is what this means for children. 169,050 children were living in temporary accommodation in England as of March 2025. In London alone, that number reached 97,140 by June. Nearly 100,000 children in the capital don't have a permanent home. London Councils reports that 183,000 Londoners now require temporary accommodation. That's 1 in 50 residents of the entire city. The average length of stay in temporary accommodation in London has reached 3 years and 11 months. One London borough told researchers they now expect some children to spend their entire childhoods in temporary accommodation, and the financial cost is staggering. London boroughs collectively spend £4 million every single day on temporary accommodation. Last year, they overspent their homelessness budgets by at least £330 million, a 60% overrun on their original plans. This money isn't going toward building new homes. It's not even going toward maintaining existing stock. It's pure crisis management, paying for hotel rooms and emergency placements because the underlying supply problem has never been fixed. So what has the mayor actually done? In May 2025, Khan made a dramatic announcement. He would explore building on London's green belt to address the housing crisis. This represented a complete reversal of his previous position, and he acknowledged as much. "It breaks my heart," he said. "The damage the housing crisis is causing is pervasive and profound." Fine words, but exploring the possibility of building on green belt land isn't the same as actually building homes. The consultation process alone will take months. Planning applications will face challenges. Construction won't begin for years. Meanwhile, the crisis deepens every single day. The trade body Property Mark issued a strong rebuke to the mayor in July, accusing him of overlooking the role of the private rental sector in providing homes for Londoners. They warned that without adequate policy support, the private rental sector is at risk of shrinking further, driving up rents and reducing tenant choice. But here's what really reveals the mayor's priorities. While landlords flee the market and tenants face record rents, the Greater London Authority has been accused of overstating its affordable housing achievements. In November, Tim Crane, founder of London development analyst Molior, claimed officials encouraged developers to dig a trench to qualify as a housing start, artificially boosting the mayor's figures. The mayor said it was the first he'd heard of these claims. after 9 years in office. This is the pattern we keep seeing. Bold announcements about protecting tenants, grand promises about affordable housing. But when you dig into the actual numbers, the situation on the ground keeps getting worse. Let's talk about what this means for you. If you're a renter in London, you're facing a market where supply continues to fall short of demand. The number of homes available to rent is just 6% higher than last year in the capital, compared to much larger increases elsewhere in the country. And with 31% of London homes for sale having previously been rentals, that supply problem isn't going away soon. Competition for properties remains fierce. Each rental listing receives an average of 10 applications, more than double the pre-pandemic level. Finding a home isn't just expensive, it's exhausting. If you're a landlord, you're caught between rising costs and an increasingly hostile regulatory environment. The Renters' Rights Act received royal assent in October 2025. The full abolition of Section 21 evictions is expected in 2026. The window for operating under the old rules is closing fast. Many landlords have already made their decision. More will follow. And if you're simply someone who cares about the future of London, you should be deeply worried. A city where working families cannot afford to live is not a sustainable city. A city where nearly 100,000 children are homeless is not a functioning city. The mayor's response has been to propose rent-controlled homes for key workers. But even his most optimistic projections only promise 6,000 such homes by 2030. That's a rounding error against the scale of the problem. The market needs 88,000 new homes every year. The mayor is promising 6,000 over 5 years. You don't need to be an economist to see the gap. What should actually be done? First, acknowledge the reality. The private rental sector isn't some optional extra in the housing market. It houses over 1 million London households. Policies that drive landlords out of the market don't protect tenants. They leave tenants scrambling for an ever-shrinking pool of available homes. Second, streamline the planning system. London councils regularly fail to meet their own housing targets, and a major reason is the glacial pace of planning approvals. Build-to-rent developments, which could add institutional quality rental stock, face years of delays before breaking ground. Third, address the court system before implementing eviction reforms. One of the biggest fears around the Renters' Rights Act is that the courts simply cannot handle the increased caseload. If every legitimate eviction requires court involvement and courts take 6 months or more to process claims, landlords face impossible situations. The government has promised digital improvements, but they're not in place yet. Fourth, reform housing benefit. The freeze on local housing allowance means the gap between what councils can reclaim and what they're actually spending continues to widen. London Councils estimates this gap reached £140 million last year. That's money councils have to find from other services. But most importantly, someone needs to take responsibility. The mayor has been in office for 9 years. The housing crisis has worsened on his watch. Rents have reached record highs. Homelessness has reached record levels. Landlords are leaving at record rates. At some point, the buck has to stop somewhere. Instead, what we get are press releases about rent-controlled homes that won't materialize for years. Consultations about greenbelt development that may never result in actual housing. And all the while, the statistics keep climbing in the wrong direction. 45,000 rental homes lost since 2021. 183,000 Londoners in temporary accommodation. 97,000 children without permanent homes. £330 million in homelessness budget overruns. These aren't just numbers, they're families. They're people who came to London believing in the promise of opportunity, only to find themselves locked out of even the most basic housing. The mayor likes to blame external factors: government policy, economic conditions, the pandemic, Brexit. There's always something else responsible. But other cities face similar challenges without experiencing this level of dysfunction. Other mayors have delivered more with less. At some point, voters in London will need to decide whether 9 years of failure deserves to be rewarded with continued support. Because if nothing changes, the trends are clear. More landlords will leave. Fewer homes will be available. Rents will keep climbing. Homelessness will keep growing. And the crisis will continue to deepen. That's not a prediction. That's just what the current trajectory shows us. So here's my question for you. If you live in London, rent in London, or care about what happens to this city, what do you think should be done? Are the current policies working? Is the mayor doing enough? Or is it time for a fundamentally different approach? Let me know in the comments. And if you found this analysis useful, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss future updates as this situation develops. Because the housing crisis isn't going away. And unless something changes, it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better.